was a mistake. You know, that what, because we funded it again, so I'm thinking that largely we thought that was not a good choice if there was an option. To do it again, I mean, we may have no other choice, but if there's some other manipulation of the budget here, and I think as a community, for us to make that decision again, I don't have enough information yet, not knowing the level 2, the tier 1, the tier 2, and understanding that the revenue number still may be a bit of a moving target. So those are my comments, and I guess what are questions?
I just wanted, we were talking about contract negotiations that are happening right now. As a citizen of the town, and looking at the list of cuts that we're definitely going to do, and then things that we're considering, and to think, I mean, I guess the court of public opinion, I'm going to have a hard time telling my 4th grader she's going into a class of 30-something kids possibly, and teachers are getting raises, you know, and a lot of us have, you know, spouses out of work, don't have jobs, making cuts at home because of the economy. They're going to get raises, and the health insurance that the town employees have is far greater and better than what most people have today. And so I think that, you know, if there's a message to be sent from the community, it's that, you know, do the right thing for public education. Because I feel like right now we're witnessing the demise of public education. Basically, we're unraveling everything, you know, that's important. And it's so frustrating to think that there's a possibility there's the largest group of employees in town are going to fight for more money at this point. It's disheartening. It's upsetting.
It's not a unilateral process.
I even take offense to the word bargaining, because we're not in a bargaining situation anymore.
Well, we
There's
are.
no bargain.
We have to bargain.
There's no bargain to be had anymore. I mean, it's like, this is the facts here. You know, you're basically dismantling a public education system, what we're looking at here. And it's incredibly upsetting as a parent to think that the Mass Teachers Association or the union or whoever is in charge of this would let this kind of thing happen.
No,
You know, and the unions have already let it happen to car dealers, but car dealerships are, you know, the car industry unions have, you know, helped dismantle it. Are we really going to let this happen to public education? And I'm not
No, we
directing this
can't
to
talk
you.
about the negotiations publicly, but I do want to, I want to be somewhat fair, and I think the teachers to date have been pretty reasonable. Now, there are still some issues on the table, but I think that they're cognizant of what's going on. You know, they're also part of a statewide employees association, and so there are issues that they have to deal with that too. But I think that they've been, I don't know, Dre, I don't know.
They've been fair, they've been reasonable. They're not, it's not what we wanted to
Right.
be, but we're progressing.
Yeah, I mean, there has been progress. They're well aware of the situation. Dr. Troden keeps them aware of every time there's a revenue reduction or a new cost increase that we face. You know, I do think we are making progress, and as Jerry said, we are meeting again tomorrow, and obviously our goal is that, I think it's going to be difficult to have something done by town meeting, but
I know this, every time we leave a session, we basically leave it with, it could be worse the next time we meet. And we've been 100% correct about that.
every time we've met with them, the situation has been worse.
So let me ask you, if we have a deficit of too many numbers, 751.
Yeah.
And certainly Mr. Mosseri has, you know, alluded to the potential of room and meals tax and whatever number that might be. You know, we'll discuss it, finance planning team, how that's split up. But even if we whittled that down and we're looking at 500,000 or 600,000, to what extent would the community be willing to transfer reserve funds to cover all or a portion of this deficit? Certainly, Marcy has told us to go back and look at some number of cuts within our level 2 grouping, and that's reasonable. We'll do that. We've got it broken down, and we'll have a discussion on priorities and we'll find common ground, but we're not gonna find $500,000 that does not impact the classroom. So I'm really interested in knowing if the community would transfer reserve funds. 100,000, 200,000?
I can tell you right now, though, I think that the community won't if the teachers are going to ask for the raise and not negotiate with the GIC.
Well, that's fair.
I do, you know, I mean, just look around, people are leaving town, the houses are up for sale, there's like 5 on my street. I just really think that you're, you know, a lot of people are saying, why would I do this? Why would I want to be
All right,
here?
if those funds were not going, if we had our contract settled by June 8th, if this was a hole where the only way we could fill it was to lay off staff members, I mean, we'll present a motion at town meeting. We want it to reflect the community's wishes so that we can fund our budgets and end town meeting balance. Jeff?
You guys can answer this, but kind of a question or comment from the selectmen. I mean, if it gets settled, the negotiations, the situations have understood that the town side employees looking at no salary increases, no step raises. If it turns out, let's say, that the teachers do something similar, but now that now the situation is that we're looking at 15 layoffs. Does that change the way that the selectmen can look at sharing the pain somehow in terms of, are all the layoffs going to end up having to be on the teacher side? Are there sort of some other scenarios that you may be envisioning that if it comes down to that, if the teachers sort of do something similar to the public employees, then would there be layoffs on both sides perhaps?
I take offense to the issue of sharing the pain, first. Town employees have been cooperative. We haven't settled all our contracts. We've made good progress. The bottom line is, if we don't settle a contract, or we end up in a situation where we have to award an increase to a particular union, the union will suffer from the point of view that we will cut services. We have set up a -3% budget, and the town employees are working with it. We also have taken extraordinary steps to shift as much money, and we have increased the split to get as much money over to the school budget. I would be opposed to taking money from the stabilization fund this year. I would recommend that if the school department wanted to go forward with reducing the number of layoffs based on the numbers, that they should take it out of the ARA funds and worry about 2011 from the point of view that if 2011 came out and it wasn't stimulus money and we're in a real big hole, that's what the stabilization money should be used for. I would use the ARA money first before I even touch the stabilization fund. The stabilization fund has an impact on our ability to borrow, the percentage of money that we, the interest rate, which is significant in terms of cash outlay. It affects all the operations. The unfortunate part of this whole thing is that here we are very, very close to having to take a vote in the beginning of the year, and we still don't have enough information. We had our legislators at our last board meeting, both Senator Tarr and Representative Jones, and they clearly have helped this town and the towns they represent. But even they couldn't answer the questions. I mean, I think the shame of it all with our legislature is that they don't have any sense of where the communities have to be associated with setting their budgets for next year and trying to get things settled and answers so that we can make a firm decision what to do. So right now, based on the information that I have and that the board has, we think it would be best to go forward with budget numbers, go forward with the negotiations that are going on, trim the budget such that if the negotiations fail, we're going to have to cut services, period. The school has additional options associated with the stimulus money. And be I would oppose any move at town meeting. And I'm talking personally now because, you know, the board hasn't had a discussion on this, to take money from stabilization to supplement the school budget. Before, I would recommend taking additional money from the ARRA first. And in 2011, if there isn't additional ARRA money, we don't know, right? But if there isn't, and we're in a real mess, which, I don't see us climbing out of this in 2011. I think the economy's going to take longer to recover. And even at that, I mean, if there was no economic downturn, right, we'd be still struggling with budgets this year, although it wouldn't be any good, as bad as it is. Then I think we'd have to consider using the stabilization.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Bob, to take money out of stabilization is two-thirds.
Two-thirds.
I agree that 2011 will be worse. And if we're resistant to take 100,000 even out of stabilization now, what makes you think we'll do that in 2011 if it's worse? I think we would be foolish to spend 100% of the stimulus money now, knowing that everybody in this room nodded their head when Bob said 2011 will probably be worse. So if we have the ability to sock away 50% of that money to 2011, I think we'd be foolish not to. That money is to bring North Reading to foundation. 166 towns are below foundation budget. That money should bring us to foundation today, so that tomorrow and every year after that, we're at foundation. That we're delaying it over 2 years is robbing 2 years of graduating classes. 2 years of kids will go through. That the federal government has said, do something about people below foundation. The governor has said, we'll use this money to take care of those kids in those districts below foundation. And we would say, let's take 2 years to get there, and let's gamble with year 2. Excuse me. I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that while we have $1.7 million in a reserve account. Let's take the $200 million, or the $200,000 out of the reserve account. And if we think things will get better, let's replenish the reserve account. Let's not hold what's supposed to be for foundation budget. This isn't, your tax return check came in the mail. What do you want to buy? New furniture or fix the leaking roof? This isn't extra money. It's a one-time federal government, bring yourself up to foundation and fix the leaking roof. And we need to do it now. We're stalling. I think that if we have $1.7 million in the bank, we need to make a good faith effort, draw down some reserves, and hope that we can get through to 2011 and reposition ourselves. I would hope by then that the tax collections in town are back up, that foreclosures are down, that unemployment is down and people are back to working everywhere, and that we can start to recover.
There's even a bigger issue. First of all, it's not a good list to be on when you're not spending up to the foundation budget required by the state. That's one part of the bad news. Second part of the bad news is the estimate next year is that we will need at least $1 million to get to foundation level. I mean, $1 million additional dollars. I believe that's about correct, right, Carl? So that money isn't going to be there. So we're staring at next year of being $1 million under foundation budget that the state says you should be spending this amount on your education system. Next year will be $1 million below that to start. So I just, I'm also hesitant to touch the stabilization fund, but I think at some point you have to look at that. I'm not saying we should cover, because even if the best scenario happens, even if we agree to a contract with the teachers with no step raises, we're still looking at an almost $500,000 deficit with the Senate Ways and Means budget, which is the worst scenario. Almost $400,000